Okay, I'd like to call a regular budget meeting for Tuesday, March 12th, 2019 to order. Approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Norbury.
That the Tuesday, March 12th, 2019 budget meeting be approved as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Majinski. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. No adoption of minutes or business arising from the minutes, or petitions and delegations, or correspondence, or bylaws. So, on to 8.1, new business. Tax rate setting. Report from the Director of Finance dated March 4th, 2019 to seek council decision on 2019 tax rates and to update council on the total expected costs of the 2019-2023 financial plan. Recommendation, please. Councillor Majinski.
The council receives this report for discussion.
Seconder. Councillor Kata. All in favor? Open for discussion. So we've had a week to mull this over and have the spreadsheet available to us to make some changes and see what we can do there. What's council's thoughts today on the major industry? Councillor Howe.
I have a thought on light industry that I'd like to run by council before we get on to heavy industry. So light industry, we actually have seen an increase in the assessment this year. And what we did there, staff has suggested a tax rate of 35.84. So if we were to leave the tax rate the same as 2018, which is actually our highest rate on the assessment, that brings in revenue of about $60,000 extra. So it's not giving a mill rate cut. It's just based on the keeping the mill rate the same as 2018 rather than lowering it.
Okay.
So that is one thing that I think that stood out to me, that we could get $60,000 more in revenue there. And I just thought I'd throw that out. If anybody has an objection to that, then that's kind of a starting point.
Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and that so to keep the mill rate the same, what percentage is that? Is that like a 1.5% that is recommended?
Be approximately 5%.
5%.
Councillor
I think that's a good place to start. We'll start by industrial and keep and suggest that we keep the mill rate that we had last year. It does mean a little more revenue. And if you look across the board, the mill rate on light industrial is quite a bit less than major industry.
Absolutely.
So I have thoughts. Right there, 3.97. So that'll keep the mill rate in light industrial the same.
So $58,000 increase. Any other thoughts on this? Councillor Howe.
And I'm not set on that. It's just I wanted to get the flavor of council that if that's a starting point for us, that if everybody can agree on that, then we could look at rates beyond of that for this class or other classes. But this to me was a no-brainer that we could pick off right there. It's only $60,000, I understand that, but it is 10% of what we are potentially losing with major industrial.
Possibly, yeah, depending on what we decide.
Right.
Yeah, the valuation changes are really an important factor in these decisions, I think. So light industry increased their percentage valuation by 3.94%. Councillor Howe.
It's like to discuss a little bit about major industry. So I am of the opinion in major industry that we cannot continue to increasing the mill rate just to continue to make up the same amount of money that we have. That is one way in budgeting to balance your books. Another way is to tighten your belt or cut your budget or decrease your surplus. And this year, even after all the spending that we have done, we have a $1.6 million surplus, roughly in that ballpark. With that one little adjustment there of about $60,000, if we left the mill rate the same in 2018 as 2018 in major industry, we would see a decrease in revenue we bring in of about $665,000. So the 60,001 and 60,000 or 660 here, we're down $600,000 in revenue by keeping the mill rate the same. I don't think it's smart business of us to continue to just look at it and say, well, how much money did we get last year? Let's just increase the mill rate. Your budgets change year to year depending on what the needs of the community are and how much money we need to spend. Yes, there's a general increase of that goes with inflation of 2% that everyone talks about, but that doesn't mean that we have to continue to have the projects that we do. You know, we spend a lot of money on paving and beautifying the town, and I think it's something that we have to get prepared for, that the gas industry in Tumbler Ridge is going to continue to decrease. I do not see in the future us drilling more sour wells in Tumbler Ridge. I don't see it happening. They've gone to a completely different style of gas. This stuff is just not profitable. The companies that are left around are struggling in this area to keep afloat. They have done things. Canlin Energy is one. They've really divested in Tumbler Ridge to the tune of about $3.3 million. They've lowered their taxable amounts. And CNRL has actually only lowered theirs about $1.8 million. But both of them are looking for areas that they can cut costs, and this is something they came up with, was to divest in some areas around Tumbler Ridge with the anticipation that if the mill rates are the same, they would potentially pay less taxes. So to me, it's a tough one for them. They come in and just say, we're just going to increase the mill rate because we need $1.6 million in surplus. I disagree that we need $1.6 million in surplus. Nobody has made the argument to me to say why 1.6 is needed and 1.4 isn't, or 1.2 or 1 million or 2 million. And that, I think, is something that we need to wrap our heads around of how much surplus we feel is needed. This is a 1 year decrease. This is a 1 year in line with what we did last year if we kept it at 0.87. And if we found out that we made a catastrophic error on that $600,000, you could then increase the mill rate next year to recapture that money. But I think if we go through this process and we try it and we realize that we're not out there trying to do that, there may be other things that come in line to help bring revenue back into the town. I'm very hopeful that we'll see another coal mine fire up and come online. The likes of Peace River Coal or perhaps Quintet may come back online. And if either of those should come back online, we see an increase in somewhere in that neighborhood of $2 million to our revenue. So this $600,000, if we get one of those to come in online, does one of two things. We could then decrease the mill rate again when those places come online to keep with the same amount of money we have, or we keep the mill rate the same at 0.87 to recoup some of the money that we've lost this year, or not lost, but didn't continue to gain. So that's kind of my take on it right now, and just like to hear what other councillors think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think the surplus serves as a good contingency plan. Like, if we continue to have years that we lose like a $600,000 taxation, like, we could be in trouble in 3 years. So it could be detrimental down the road, especially if we do lose a mine, or everybody comes out, the gas wells, they all say pull out, okay, we're just gonna cap them, be done with it, and then move on, because sour gas is not profitable whatsoever. They've been drilling here before Tumbler was even around, so, and they knew it was good then, but times change and wells dry up, and so.
Yeah, and something to consider too is the valuation that these industry players tried to capture by devaluing their properties or taking their properties offline. If we keep the mill rate the same, the rest of the industry and major industry has to pick up the slack to the tune of 16%. That's a huge increase on a year-to-year basis. And you know, if we do decide to decrease that industry rate for the mill rate, I think it makes sense, because the surplus we have at the moment, was really a majority of that surplus was paid by major industry. Our major industry percentage is 44%. So the taxation rate is only 56% of our total revenue. So, you know, if we were to decrease this surplus this year, we have the reserves that have been paid for, majority of, by the major industry over the last 20 years, to be able to cover that as well. I agree with you, Councillor Howe. I think there's going to be a trend of decreasing the value of those properties over the next few years. But there's also a lot of areas within our budget that can be looked upon more closely, or shelved, or maybe our special projects budget decreases if we get into a situation where we're close to balance. There is another aspect too that is there to cover for major emergencies, but also for capital replacement, right? So that surplus is really there for our accumulated depreciation of our capital, all of our capital assets in town, right? So the strategy to continue to make $3 million surplus to put into our general reserve to cover our capital assets, I don't know if that strategy is really relevant now with such a large reserve as well. So I'm fully in support of decreasing major industry. Maybe not to the tune of the same mill rate, but I'm definitely in favor of decreasing that. Councillor Norbert.
You know, I look at we gotta look at our historical tax rates, and we haven't made any changes to major industry in the last 4 years, 3.5 years, sorry. And if we increase that just for inflation, we should be looking at least a 6% increase. I agree that we're just taking the burden and spreading it back onto other organizations that haven't shut down, and that I don't think that's particularly fair. But also, I don't think we should keep the mill rate the same, because it has been kept pretty flat. I think we're looking at a mill rate of 103. It was since 2015. We've kept it exactly the same at around 82. I think we should raise that mill rate to keep up with inflation. Up to 103, I don't think it's particularly necessary. We can say, hey, we understand your industry is hurting. We still need to collect taxes, because taxation on major industry is a way to hold them accountable to support the communities that they are a part of. And I understand CNRL is shutting down their wells, but for a company that posted a 1.8 billion profit in their third quarter last year, I don't. I'm not too concerned that ask them to put some more tax money for their for our citizens.
Councillor Kalkin.
Yeah, I just have a couple comments there. I don't have a concern in regards to keeping the same as 2018, and I'd be curious to hear why Council Norbert fears we should just keep taxing heavy industrial. We have to look at a point too where we're giving out quite a bit of money in grant and aid and fee for services and stuff like that, and I know these major industries have also contributed to a local economy on their own. And we just gonna keep taxing these guys till we tax them out of business, or because they're here, we should just tax because they're big enough and they're making 1.8 million money in their first quarter. I totally disagree with that. That's just my opinion.
Okay, Councillor Norbury.
So I'd clarify, that was 1.8 billion in 3 months. Now, if we're looking at a company that's posting, and looking back at their quarter one, it was 600 million, quarter two was 500, quarter three was 1.8 billion. So for a company to make $3 billion over approximately $2 billion over the course of a year, saying that they shouldn't be taxed I disagree with that fully. I mean, we need to. It's not just enough that companies provide jobs for people in the region. They need to be taxed to provide contributing to society and our community. They're loyal to the shareholders, the board, so of course they're coming in and asking for tax decreases. Our shareholders are our residents, and we need to demand from heavy industry that if you're going to do business in this region, you're going to pull billions of dollars in profits from the ground. You need to spread that around. It's not just enough to provide jobs.
Yeah, so just on the rebuttal on that one there. So 1.8 billion, but that's not from the local area of the Peace Region or Tumble Ridge. That's company wide. I looked it up today. That's company wide. They don't. CNRL is not just obviously in Tumble Ridge; they're company wide. So to get a true fact of what certain companies' financials are, I think you'd have to look at the local area where they're maybe shutting some of their wells down because of their financial situation. So I'm not talking about just one company, whether it be CNRL or whoever. But to me, when we have heavy industrial taking on a huge burden of taxes to our community, I think there's a time that we got to give back to them too, so they can pull out of the water too. Sometimes it's going to come down to what we're actually giving to our locals too. I mean, I can't remember the number is in Grant and Aiden fee for services, but it's quite high compared to other areas within the piece.
Just under 400,000.
Yeah, so $400,000, and I believe Dawes Creek's under 100,000 this year, and we're giving $400,000. I think we got to look at that too. I mean, it's don't get me wrong, I support this community hugely, not only on council but as a resident, but we also got to look. We keep doing this, and we're just going to keep raising taxes. We're going to tax people out of Tunbridge, whether it is heavy industrial or light business or light industrial or business. We're going to tax them enough that they're going to leave. And I think we got to look at that.
Councillor Norbury.
I don't think what our tax rates or mill rates are going to have the factor in if a business stays in Tumble Ridge or not. It comes down to the product that they are mining and selling. I think that is the major factor. Looking at 2014, we kept the tax rate stable when the mines went. Mines still shut down. The taxes that we kept stable, they didn't make a difference. If you go back and you,
Okay. From this side, comments? I'd like to propose major industry to drop by 10%. Show councillors.
With the 3.9 increase in light industrial staying the same. Has council agreed on the 3.9? There's been no motion, just so you're aware.
No, not yet. The reason I'm proposing 10% is because I agree with Councillor Norbury. I think inflation does need to play a part in this. It's not such a big hit. 5% increase is a lot better than 15%. Councillor, how did you have your?
Yeah, so, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I'm not sure where Councillor Norbury is getting his information from that we haven't increased the mill rates. Is it from the chart that was provided by Mr. Wall? So there is an increase in that over 2015. 2015 mill rate was 80.0908. In 2015, it did go up to 82. Then it went to 87 last year, and then now we're looking to go to 103. So there has been a significant increase. And the point you make about when the mines went down, that we didn't lose any there. That's because they didn't change their operating. As long as the buildings are there on the mine site, we're able to tax them. They're able to go in and apply for something through BC assessment. I'm not sure how it works, but Peace River Coal was able to do it. They went in and said we are a non-operating mine, and they were able to decrease their tax bill by about $2.2 million over the assets that they owned in the area. So that's the one thing there that happened as well. Another thing that happened in 2012 is the introduction of the Quality Wind Farm. So when the Quality Wind Farm came in, they're taxed in the utility bracket, which is at 0.0040, which is set by the government. We can't change that. That increased the revenue into the district of Tumbler Ridge by over $2 million. That's what we were never getting that money. They came in, put windmills up. Here's $2 million every year for you, Tumbler Ridge, to keep going forward. When that happened, we didn't decrease the mill rate for anyone else. We didn't lower the taxes for anyone else. We just took that in as a windfall. So to me, at some point, you can't continue to keep moving the mill rate further and further up. Councillor Norbury makes a good point that CNRL, yes, they did have fantastic quarters, but they've also had quarters in years where they've lost money. And, the essence of the area we are in, we cannot control what they do in the oil sands or what they do anywhere else. And CNRL is only one of the companies that's within the industry. Canlin Energy decreased massively. They are almost totally divested out of Tumbler Ridge. So much more so than CNRL. CNRL just seems to own more of the lion's share of the gas assets that are around Tumbler Ridge. But, we've been contacted by CNRL so they could give us some type of insight on their finances in our area. I understand that they would like to do a closed meeting with that. We're not comfortable with that. The mayor, you're not comfortable with that at this time. Myself, I would be comfortable with that, provided that it is not in relation to them to say and set our tax rate at this or lower our taxes to this. I would be interested in hearing from them come in as a delegation to explain to us the challenges they have in our area, and hearing it from the horse's mouth is sometimes better than hearing it from councillors, right? So. But I do understand that they have struggled in the industry, in the area, and primarily, Councillor Norbury is right, it is because of commodity prices. Commodity prices are low for natural gas right now, and they're struggling in the area. And, these companies to keep going, just like us, when times are tough, you got to tighten your belt. And that's what they're trying to do. That may be what we have to do in a few years if we lose the entire gas industry in and around Tumbler Ridge, if they divest everything out of here, and if God forbid we ever lost the coal mines, we will be in a very similar situation that they were in 2000, 2001 when the mines were shutting down and they were fearful we were going to lose everything. Property values decrease, everything decreases, and at that time you've got to make up for it. So I just think that the $600,000 at this point, something that we've done that's been very, very good in council here, we have a surplus of $25, $27 million, somewhere in there, depending on how you look at it. We were able to take that money 4 years ago, look at different options to invest that money, and last year we had an investment gain of over $600,000. We can anticipate, based on the rates that we get, because they're set rates, we can't lose any money out of this, that we will get another $600,000 in interest next year, and the year after, and possibly more if the rate starts to compound. So really, that $600,000 that we've decided, it's unfortunate that the assessments have gone down for these companies, but I don't think that we go and increase the mill rate so that we continue to get that $600,000 plus the $600,000 we made in interest gains and continue to just build and build and build more and more, and at some point, for what? We do, and this year is a year that we've said we are going to get together and we are going to look at the reserve funds, and we're going to figure out how much money we want to have down the road and where that money needs to come from. For instance, when they redid the community center, it was a $5 million project, roughly $5 million project. They didn't take that out of our reserve fund. They said, we're going to borrow that money from the MFA and we're going to pay that money back over a 5 or 6 year period, whatever it was. They can do the same thing 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road, if they decide, geez, we need to replace 50% of the pipes in Tumbler Ridge, and these dummies of this time only saved us $13 million. That's a good kick in the pants to get your pipes back in the ground, right? So, and then that can be, it doesn't all have to be paid for on the backs of the people that are here right now. And that's a bit of my problem with continuing to do this, that we're looking forward to the future for 40 years out so that the people that live here 40 years from now don't have to pay anything to put the pipes and stuff back in the ground. That to me is, is not right.
Yeah, and we haven't got our asset management plan completed yet, so realistically, we don't know exactly how much we're gonna need 20 years from now either. So I completely agree with you, Councillor Howell, that I think we need to look at our heavy major industry and give them a bit of a break. I don't feel that it's fair for other companies within that group to have to make up the slack for another company evaluating their properties. And 15% is a very large increase as well. Like I say, we have a lot of options here. And we have a lot of good options. We are very, very fortunate in this district to be in the position that we're in at the moment. It's quite unique, I think, throughout the whole province and probably a couple of provinces. We've been very fortunate to come into this term, to come into a $1.5 million surplus and a $25 or $26 million reserve. We haven't had to make the hard decisions. We haven't had to look at line items and say, you know what, we can't afford that this year. We haven't been able to do that. Or we haven't needed to do that because we're in such a fortunate position. Dropping the surplus from 1 million, or from 1.6 to 1 million, we're still in surplus. We still have a bit of a cushion. And until our asset management plan is complete and we really start allocating depreciation from our reserve to that plan, I can't predict how much we're going to need. Councillor Howell?
So I think you hit the nail on the head in when you said we still have a surplus. If we were to decrease this by the 600,000 or the 10%, whichever one we end up deciding, we still have $1 million surplus, and we've still got a great special projects and capital budget that we spent a lot of money in this too. I don't have the total handy, but if Mr. Wall, maybe you could just help explain to us a little bit more on the big ticket item of the $1.8 million for the internet access. If we did not have that item on the agenda, where would that 1.8 million, is that canceled out? Like, have we assumed that we're getting that money in grants? Or is that in, if we weren't doing it, we would have an additional $1.8 million in surplus right now?
We'd have an additional $800,000 in surplus because we're anticipating $1 million coming through grants. So $1.8 million spend, $1 million in revenue, 800,000 would be the money left over to go back in the surplus.
Okay. Which we also intend to get that money back from PRIS.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? So if you think about it that way, not only do we have $1 million surplus, you can add in 1.8 million to that. We have a $2.8 million surplus. It makes that $600,000 a lot easier pill to swallow.
Councillor Norbury?
Yeah, so I really understand what you guys are saying. I do. I think a 5% increase. I'd like to see that down the middle. Rather than we're gonna. So right now we're essentially talking about a 5% increase.
For which one?
For major industrial, because we would be talking about a 15%
Correct.
increase. I'd be pretty happy if we could split it down the middle and have a 7.5% increase, and because this money would go directly to our residents, and that'll be for me. I mean, we can make a motion and we can try and vote on it and see which way it goes.
Mr. Wall, could you replace that 10% with 7.5, please? Councillor Norbury.
And that sort of goes with increasing the mill rate a couple of percent every year to catch up from 87 now to 95. That's just how I'm thinking.
Okay. Councillor Hall.
So from where I'm at, I'd like to see the mill rate at 87%, or 87.000, basically what it was last year. I don't know what percentage of decrease that is. About 15%. Okay.
Yeah, so at 15%, the mill rate's at 87.94. Compared to last year's 86.96.
%.
16 gets us to 87. Pretty close.
Yeah.
So that's a total change of 609,027.
Okay.
Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Is this assuming that we're going to keep the business the same as well? So the only change would be to light industrial?
No, we haven't really talked about business yet. Mr. Wall.
So maybe I'll just recap the discussion or where we're at for Councillor Lehmann. Council is still looking at deciding where to go on the different tax rates. There's been discussion on the major industrial. It's very similar to the last discussion, whether or not it's fair to shift the burden over to the remaining players and how much revenue does the district want to actually lose out on. Council seems supportive of a 3.97% increase in light industrial, which would bring the mill rate up to the similar as it was last year. And there's discussion right now between the 16% decrease for major industry to bring them back to the mill rate, to split it in half, or to go with a 10% decrease, which would be a 5% increase in the mill rate. I just suggest to council, I think philosophically, you guys have laid out your positions to each other fairly strongly, and it may be time to put numbers there for decisions.
Councillor Howe.
And I would disagree with Mr. Wall's assessment on that. I still don't have the flavor from Councillor Lehmann, Mazinski, and Kirby. In my opinion, I don't know where you guys sit on this at this point.
Councillor Mazinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I like your recommendation of the 10%. I was kind of hoping to kind of split the difference of the mill rate between 86 and 103, so right around the 92 mark. 93 was where you were at, so that's kind of where I was looking at the negative there, yeah. So that's kind of where I was kind of leaning towards. We're still going to be, the total change would be 300,000. I think that's fairly reasonable. You know, we're right in the middle ground there, so that's as far as I've gotten to processing that. So,
Councillor Lehmann.
Yeah, sorry about being late.
No problem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm just not happy with the idea of giving Kenuma or, you know, major industry a big boost in order to recoup that $600,000. I think it's a little bit of a big jump in 1 year. I can see maybe, you know, a small jump, but I wouldn't be in favor of trying to recover that $600,000.
So we would be in favor of increasing the mill rate to make up for their 16% decrease in valuation.
Not the whole amount, I don't think.
Yeah, so there has been couple of suggestions. My suggestion was 10% decrease to major industry, which would mean a 5% increase in the amount collected, or a 5% increase in the mill rate. And there has been also suggestion of splitting it in half, 7.5% decrease, which would mean a 7.5% increase to the mill rate. So the mill rate would go from 87 to 96. Councillor Howe.
And also my suggestion to get it back to 87, leave it at 87, and that is a 16% decrease. But that is setting the mill rate the same. It's only based on what BC assessment has given us for their numbers. The mill rate stays the same as last year. And that would equate to 16% discount, or decrease in the amount collected, which is about $665,000.
Councillor Howe also suggested the 3.97% increase to light industrial because of the valuation increase this year.
And that is keeping the mill rate the same for them.
Councillor Norbert.
I think after hearing discussion, I can get behind a 10% decrease on major industrial, and I think we should go after we should ask an increase to light industrial as well. We're looking at keeping the mill rate the same. Why don't we increase the mill rate 2%? So I'd go on 3.9 to 5.9. To spread that burden out. Because costs of everything are going up. It's a very reasonable rationale to say, costs of everything are going up.
Okay. Councillor Kirby, what are your thoughts?
I'm listening to the conversation. I've always said this is not my strong point on council, but I look at, we're taking money in to provide services to the community. We do have a good pot right now. We have money in the bank. We're going to decrease taxes to major industry, yet we're increasing to other industries that could be suffering along the same lines. It's a trickle effect. I myself would say keep it all the same across the board. Except drop the major industry, but keep everything else the same.
And how much would you want to drop major industry?
No, I like the numbers there, but I would take out what we're adding to light industry, and that's where I'd be. Everything else is, and then we still are making 1.2 million to put into reserves, and people say how much, what do we build our reserves to, what extent, so that's the thing, is that's where I'd sit right there.
All right, well, I think we kind of understand everyone's position here. Someone would like to make a motion on the major industry. Councillor Norbert.
I'd like to make a recommendation that we reduce the amount collected by 10% in the major industry.
Councillor Howe.
For my vote, it needs to be greater decrease than that, especially if light industry is coming off the marker. So without knowing what light industry is, I definitely need to see a greater decrease in major industry. I should have started my numbers below 87, but because my negotiating tactic of being honest and fair didn't work.
Councillor Norbert.
I think this is the middle ground for everyone. We still need to get taxes in to provide services for our citizens. We might not want to throw all that burden on a major industry, I get that, but at the same time, we still have a town to run. I feel that the raise in mill rate is appropriate this time.
Councillor Jinsky.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So if we were to take the burden off of the light industry, which was about 60,000 when Councillor Howe suggested a 3.97%. What would that be if we put it on to the major industry at, say, 11% or 12%? It's going to be so marginal. That's not even going to bump up that, make up that. It's going to be way over than the 60,000, right? If that makes sense. So if it's a negative 11% on the major industry, I just want to see the total change on the bottom there.
45,000.
Yeah, so even if we went to 12% there, and then we went back, on light industry, back down to 3.97 or what Councillor Howe suggested, I can't remember if it was that exact amount,
97, yeah.
to keep the mill rate the same there. But major industry, if we could decrease the mill rate from 93 down, so it'd be probably 12%, so down to 91, yeah, a loss. Or not really at a loss, but that's where I'd kind of be sitting at.
Okay, Councillor Howe.
Although it's not as great as I would want, I would be lured in that direction with that change.
Yeah, I think that's middle ground for all of us, for sure. Let's deal with the motion at hand then. All in favor of the motion of decreasing major industry by 10%? Opposed? Defeated, thank you. Okay, we go back to the 12% and the 3.97 here, please. Everyone comfortable with those numbers? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'd be comfortable if 3.97 was off. Just to see what that,
500,000.
We need 500,000.
That was the change, total change.
That wasn't a $500,000 change by 3.
60,
No, no.
60.
No, total.
$60,000.
Yes.
Yes. The difference there. Councilor Majinski?
Sorry, I was just
Okay.
going to, yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Howe?
Yeah, and so again, the point of adding in that 3.97 is to keep the mill rate the same as it was in 2018. The assessment on the stuff that was out there, we have more stuff out there and it's got more value to it. So that's why if we keep the mill rate the same, the rate of taxes go up. It doesn't make sense because the assessments went up for us to then lower or are essentially lowering the mill rate so that we make the same amount of money. This is just changing some of the burden. And a lot of this is oil companies. It's taxed in a different bracket for some reason. I don't know if it's pipelines or what, but it's different than the facilities or something, right? So.
Yeah, a lot of the light industry is still oil and gas, for sure.
But it's the greater part of what did not get the stuff they totally decreased. And so I would assume that this is likely more like pipelines and stuff that, they haven't taken out of the ground, right? So assume.
Yeah, no, I think the valuation changes we definitely need to pay attention to, especially for our major and light industry categories there. Councilor Norbury?
why don't we get back to making motions here, and why don't we make the motion that we keep the light industry mill rate the same, which would mean a 3.97% increase in total increase
Revenue.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Seconder? Councilor Majinski? Open for discussion. All in favor of...
might as well get on the bandwagon.
Okay, one down. Councilor Howe?
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Wall. Here.
I was just going to say, traditionally in Tumbler Ridge and across most municipalities, residential, farm, and recreation nonprofit are all left at the same mill rate. And if council wants to follow that tradition, it's nothing that you have to follow, but I'd say it's generally the standard across British Columbia, so that would leave decision in your business tax rate left.
Councillor Hall.
I think major industry still has to be dealt with at this time. I'll put the motion on the floor that we decrease the amount of revenue collected by 12% to reflect in 91.0, whatever that is, mill rate for 2019.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Kalka. Open for discussion. Okay, call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so we have business and other. Councillor Hall.
Was residential dealt with in the previous meeting
It was.
and voted on?
It was, and we voted to collect the same amount of revenue as we did last year. So there was a 5% decrease in valuations.
So the mill rate
The
increase.
mill rate went from 6.67 to 7.05. Councillor Mowbray.
I'm content to leave the business tax collected the same as last year. It looks to me like the evaluations did go up. So I'm content to give a little bit of help toward our local businesses and just keep the tax rate collected the same.
Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I kind of like to see the recommendation of a 1.5% increase.
Business.
Yes, to business.
$12,000.
Councillor Howell.
I like the 1.5% increase to business as well. It's a small amount, but we got to start getting those business rates back in line.
Okay, I'll speak against this one. I think our small businesses are struggling to make ends meet in our small community. And we've always said that Tumbler Ridge is open for business, but if our businesses in town can barely survive, how can we expect new businesses to come to town, especially small businesses? Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. We are currently in an upturn in our economy here, and at least another 3 years. We'll probably see some more businesses come in, fill up the downtown core. So I think we're in a positive spot right now where there are businesses coming in because there is a need, there is a demand for what we have to offer for the new families and residents that are coming into town.
Home based. And if that's the case, they actually don't pay a business tax, they just pay a residential tax. So, I mean, if we start putting a bunch of businesses and houses and we're gonna say that's increasing our thing, it's actually the businesses that are paying for a home-based business to open up. I see it differently. I won't support that motion.
Councillor Howell.
Got to be sure what we're saying there. You're saying that any business that is based out of a residence pays residential taxes and not business taxes?
Not every business.
Okay.
My understanding.
We may want to get clarification on
Not every
that
business, my
from
understanding.
Mr. Wall.
Mr. Wall.
It would just depend on what the business is. If there's a dedicated space within your residence, NBC assessment knows about it, that amount of space will be taxed at a business rate and the others won't. That's not to say every home business has space within their home that's going to be taxed at the business rate. Some of it will be residential. Some of the businesses will definitely have a business tax rate, and especially if you're operating out of a garage. We have at some point had food preparation in homes. That food preparation area would be taxed at the business rates. But for a lot of our home-based businesses, they would be taxed at the residential rate.
Councillor Hall.
Just the example, perhaps maybe the dental office that's based out of a residence. Do we have any confirmation that they pay resident taxes, or do they pay business taxes on the portion of which?
That would be up to BC assessment, but they would, I would suspect if everything is up to date for the information BC assessment has, that they would be paying a business tax rate on part of the value of that home.
Councillor Cow.
I'm just curious who updates BC assessment in regards to residential or home-based businesses coming in. Is that district or?
We do. Every year we send our business licenses to BC assessment, and they'll take it from there. But we do not follow up, and we do not check. We're not a I don't know what you want to call it. We're not a verification authority on BC assessment's work.
Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Just kind of recapping last year, I think we heard from our business community loud and clear that they are struggling and that they need council support to support them. So I would be voting against an increase to small business.
Okay. Councillor Lehmann.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I tend to agree with Councillor Kirby because I've asked Subway and other stores how, or other businesses how business is, and it's not, it's decent, but it's not busy. And I mean, it's been slow, and I mean, this is especially the time of year that it's going to be slow, but I don't think it's going to pick up all that much. And I know it's only $12,000, but I'd rather see the businesses stay open.
I agree. Okay, so Councillor Majinski, did you want to put a motion on the floor for 1.5%? Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Yes, I'd like to put the motion on the floor to raise the business tax rate to 1.5%.
Mr. Wall.
Increase.
Just to clarify, to raise the amount collected from business by 1.5%.
Correct.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Howe. For discussion. Councillor Howe.
Can I see the total assessment for major industrial, light industrial, and business in Tumbler Ridge?
And it should be on your agenda as well, at the back.
Okay.
About, 120 million.
What?
1.2 million.
For what?
The total valuation.
Oh, sorry.
Of business is 33 million.
The increase in
Business is 33, yes. You said major, light, and business
Oh,
altogether?
yeah, no, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I wanted to just see the three of them not
Oh,
grouped together.
gotcha.
Just to see where the tax burden lies. So, and
Councillor Howe.
so back in 2015, this is just some record that I had sitting around my desk here. We had a total assessment for businesses of $46 million. So Councillor Kirby's idea that businesses are struggling sure seems to take light here, and it sure looks like that's the case. That if we've lost, somewhere in the neighborhood of $13 million in business valuation, it appears that we have less businesses in town from 2005 or 15. Sorry. So, although I seconded it, I probably will be voting against this.
Any other comments? Okay, call the question. Motion on the floor. All in favor? All opposed? Defeated. Okay, would someone like to make another motion about on the business? Councillor Norbury.
I'd like to make the motion that we keep the amount of taxes collected by business same as last year.
Seconder. Councillor Lehmann. Open for discussion. call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay, and so I think now we just need to decide if we want to keep the mill rates the same as residential, nonprofit, and farm. Is that correct, Mr. Wall? Okay. So we'll think about that. Councillor Kirby,
I'll make the motion that we keep the mill rate for residential, nonprofit and farm the same.
seconder. Councillor Majinski, open for discussion.
So we're keeping
Councillor Howe.
we're keeping the mill rate for residential the same.
No, they keep the mill rate for recreation and farm.
Oh,
the same
sorry.
as residential.
She said
Yeah, I made,
So-
yeah, made a mistake.
So
Yeah,
the
recreation.
residential mill rate has increased this year. We've already decided on that to collect the same amount of revenue as last year. So the mill rate went from 6.67 to 7.05. So now, in the past, we have decided to keep the recreation, nonprofit, and the farm mill rates the same as the residential.
Yep.
That's what we have to decide.
But the motion was
Yep.
residential. That's what I'm saying. She said residential.
Instead of recreation.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. My
Yes, we have.
apologies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thompson.
Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I'd just like to change the motion to recreation, nonprofit and farm. The mill rate the same.
Friendly amendment.
Yeah, because it wasn't seconded, I don't think.
I believe it was. Was it not? Defeat it.
Let's just defeat
Okay.
it. Call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Defeated. Councillor Kirby?
Okay, let's try again. Motion to keep the mill rates the same for recreation, nonprofit and farm
As the
as,
Residential. That's the residential.
as the residential, okay.
Second. Councillor Norbury. Open for discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I believe that's all for tax rate settings. Thank you very much, everyone. So moving on to section 9, notice of motion. Councillor Lehmann.
Yeah, I have a notice of motion. The council changes from low to high priority on the core service review timeline. Establish single labor.
And I'd also like to make a notice of motion that we include some kind of food for our council meetings. The timing of the meetings, they've been a tendency to go long, so I think that would be appreciated by all.
As long as it's not sugar.
No sugar. Dietary concerns considered. Councillor's business, any councillor's business? Is there any meetings in the last little while? I haven't seen any reports lately, so I'd like to kind of reiterate the fact that we all need to stay informed with all that's going on. And so if we can continue those reports to all of council, that would be appreciated. Councillor Howell?
I have an upcoming meeting on the 18th with Northern Health again to discuss some more stuff on the clinic and our issues over there. So if anybody has any information that they want brought forward at that meeting, or they want to get on and give us a hand with it, then let me know.
Alright, no other council business? Okay, question and answer period. Questions from the media?
None.
Good. Alright. Adjournment, recommendation please. Councilor Kirby,
Motion.
second, Councilor Lehmann.